Nathan Carter believed he understood the world. He had built empires from boardrooms and carved power out of chaos. In the heart of downtown Chicago, his name carried weight, one whispered with respect, fear, and envy. His mornings were predictable. Imported coffee in a handcrafted cup, leather-bound agendas, and walls of glass that kept the world's mess at arm's length. But everything changed the morning. A little girl with trembling hands and brave eyes walked into his office. She couldn't have been more than 7. Curly hair pulled into uneven pigtails, small shoes worn at the edges, and a school uniform slightly too big for her tiny frame. Her gaze held none of the hesitation people usually carried when they stood before Nathan Carter. No polished words. No rehearsed flattery, just a single sentence. "Daddy, Mommy's in court because of you." Time didn't just slow, it shattered. The tablet in Nathan's hand slipped onto the floor. His assistant, Marla, who had ushered the girl in thinking she was part of a scheduled charity event, froze at the doorway. The room, once humming with confidence and commerce, now echoed with the silence that follows a soul being shaken. Nathan hadn't known her. Not her name. Not her story. Not that she existed. His first instinct was denial. Some mistake. Some mix-up. Some elaborate prank. But when he knelt to meet her eyes, he saw something terrifying. Truth. "What's your name?" he managed, his voice quieter than he'd ever heard it. "Lila," she replied, her fingers tightly clutching a photograph, worn at the edges, folded 100 times. She handed it to him. In the photo, a younger Nathan stood smiling, arm around a woman with fierce eyes and a soft smile. Beside her, 2 little girls, twins, not quite toddlers. The image pulled the breath from his lungs. The woman's name was Maya, a part of his past he had tried to forget. She had worked in his first startup back when Nathan still wore second-hand suits and ran meetings in coffee shops. Maya was brilliant, bold, and honest in a way that unnerved him. For a brief few months, they had been inseparable, until the company took off, and the weight of ambition drowned everything. Else he had left quickly, quietly. He hadn't looked back, but Maya had never reached out, never claimed anything, never asked for help, never even told him. And now she was in court? For what? "Who brought you here?" he asked Lila gently. "My aunt. She's downstairs. But she said I had to tell you. Because Mommy said you need to know the truth before it's too late." The words landed like a storm across his chest. Nathan dismissed the meeting he had lined up with 3 board members. He canceled his lunch with an investor. For the first time in years, business could wait. He walked Lila downstairs to meet the woman waiting near the lobby, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s with the same strong jaw as Maya. She introduced herself as Tara, Maya's younger sister. She didn't smile when she saw him. "I wasn't sure if you'd come down," she said. "But I guess the girl knew what to say." "Why is Maya in court?" he asked. Tara hesitated. "Fraud charges, business loan default. They're saying she falsified documents, but she didn't. She borrowed money to keep her shop running during the pandemic. She was desperate. She tried to fix it, but the system's not made for people like us." Nathan processed the words slowly. "But why? Why didn't she tell me? I would have helped." "She didn't want your help," Tara snapped. "She wanted your honesty. She wanted you to acknowledge what you left behind." Lila, now sitting quietly beside them, was staring at the photograph again. The court hearing was scheduled for 11 a.m. That gave Nathan 2 hours. 2 hours to figure out what he'd missed. 2 hours to understand a woman he once loved, a family he never knew he had, and a truth that was suddenly pulling the foundation of his life apart. He had built his success on clean lines and clear decisions, but now the lines were blurring, and behind the fog was a little girl who had called him daddy without flinching. Nathan went back to his penthouse that night, but the city view no longer impressed him. He stood at the window for a long time, Lila's voice echoing in his head. He had everything: private jets, global offices, influence beyond measure, and yet somehow he had lost what mattered most: the truth. He pulled out an old laptop, one he hadn't used in over a decade. After hours of guessing passwords and scanning through old folders, he found it. A string of emails from Maya, never angry, never demanding, just short messages with updates. The girls had their first steps today. We miss you. Hope you're doing well. He had never replied. At the time, he had told himself it was cleaner. That way, less complicated. He was building something big, something important. But now he saw it for what it was. Cowardice. The next morning, Nathan wore no suit, no watch, no mask of power. He walked into the courthouse with nothing but the photo in his pocket and questions in his heart. The courtroom was smaller than he expected, more tired. The kind of room where justice didn't always look fair. Maya sat at the defendant's table, her hair pulled back, her eyes hollowed by sleepless nights. When she saw Nathan, her posture didn't change, but her eyes did. For a second he saw everything she had carried: pain, strength, love. Lila tried to wave from her seat beside Tara, but Nathan gently held her hand down. This wasn't a show. He sat quietly, listening as the prosecution painted a picture of recklessness, deceit, and debt. The numbers sounded cold, clinical, but Nathan knew better. He saw the gaps, the desperation, the choices made between rent and payroll, food and futures. He stood before the judge and asked to speak. The courtroom tensed. He introduced himself, not as CEO, not as a billionaire, but as the man who had once made a promise and broken it. He explained the context, the history, and the silence that followed. And then he offered something unexpected. He would cover the debt. All of it. Publicly, unconditionally, but not as an act of charity, as a long overdue responsibility. Maya said nothing as the judge considered his words. That night, Nathan didn't return to his high-rise. He stayed in a small apartment on the south side of the city, the one Maya had rented. It was empty now, but full of memories he had never known existed. A child's crayon drawings, a faded birthday card, receipts folded into books like bookmarks. He sat on the floor, holding the photo again. The photo that had started it all. And in the silence he heard a new voice. Not the sound of power, but of possibility. He had been lost in success. But maybe, just maybe, he could find redemption in love. Nathan didn't sleep much that night. He sat in the small, quiet apartment that used to be Maya's, surrounded by pieces of a life he had never known. The walls, though bare, whispered stories of struggle, of love, of nights spent worrying if there would be enough to eat. He imagined Maya pacing this same floor, rocking a crying baby in the dark, wondering if help would ever come. He imagined her writing those old emails not out of obligation, but out of hope. Hope that maybe he would come back, that maybe he would care. The truth settled in his chest like a stone. He hadn't just walked away from a woman. He had abandoned a family. By sunrise, Nathan had already decided. He couldn't fix everything overnight, but he could start with one thing: being there, for Maya, for the girls, for the version of himself he had long buried beneath ambition and accolades. He returned to the courthouse early, hours before the next session began. The building was still and gray, almost as if it too carried the weight of unfinished stories. He sat alone in the hallway, waiting for Maya. She walked in wearing the same clothes from the day before, simple, tired, and dignified. When she saw him sitting there, she paused, not with anger, not with surprise, but with quiet, cautious recognition. "Didn't expect you back," she said softly. "I didn't expect a lot of things," he replied. She didn't sit beside him. She leaned against the wall across from him, arms crossed, like someone preparing for another disappointment. "You think paying off some debt is going to fix all this?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. "No," he admitted. "I think listening might be a better place to start." Her eyes held his for a long second, searching for cracks, for signs of performance. But what she saw was different this time. Not the polished, untouchable man from the news, but someone trying to remember how to care, how to feel. "They don't know you," Maya said finally. "The girls. Lila's only seen pictures. Ava barely remembers anything. I'd like to change that. It's not that simple." "I know." She sighed, and for the first time, her shoulders relaxed. Just a little. "They don't need a hero, Nathan. They need someone who shows up." That sentence hit harder than any courtroom verdict. Later that morning, Nathan sat beside Tara and the girls on the wooden bench as the judge reviewed new financial documents and statements. Maya's lawyer, an overworked public defender, presented the updates while Nathan's legal team sat quietly in the back, waiting, ready but silent by request. This wasn't about flashing wealth or influence. It was about quietly standing behind someone you had once left alone. When the judge finally spoke, the tension in the room grew sharp. "Given the new circumstances," he said, "the court acknowledges the repayment of the disputed loan. While this does not erase the matter entirely, it significantly alters the outcome. Ms. Taylor, you are released under supervision, pending a full review and financial reconciliation. The court recommends community service in place of sentencing, subject to final review." Maya didn't react right away. She sat still, her hands clenched together as if bracing for another blow. When the gavel came down, she blinked. Slowly, like someone waking from a long nightmare. Outside the courthouse, the city bustled on, unaware of the quiet miracle that had just happened inside. "I'm not saying thank you," Maya told Nathan, walking beside him down the courthouse steps. "Not because I'm not grateful, but because this isn't about gratitude. It's about responsibility." "You don't owe me anything," he said, "but I owe you everything." She nodded. "Just once." The girls were waiting at the bottom of the steps. Ava, the quieter of the two, clung to Tara's hand, while Lila ran up to her mother and buried her face in her coat. Maya knelt and held, both of them tightly. Nathan stood a few feet away, unsure if he belonged in that moment. Then, unexpectedly, Ava looked up at him. She didn't say anything, just held out her hand. He took it gently and she led him toward her mother. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a welcome. But it was a beginning. That weekend, Nathan canceled a keynote speech in San Francisco. He postponed a meeting with a major investor from London. Instead, he helped carry groceries into Tara's house and learned how to braid Ava's hair. He sat on the floor with Lila and read the same storybook 3 times in a row because she liked the way he did the voices. Each evening, Maya would sit quietly in the kitchen watching him, not with suspicion but with careful attention, as if trying to figure out whether this new version of Nathan Carter was real. "I don't want them to get hurt," she said one night after the girls had gone to bed. "I won't leave again," he said simply. "You said that before." "I never said anything before, that was the problem." She looked away for a moment, then back at him. "You've changed." "No," he said. "I just finally stopped pretending that money makes a man whole." For the first time since their reunion, Maya smiled. Not wide, not long, but real. Nathan knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal in a day. But every moment spent beside his daughters, every shared meal, every bedtime story, was a stitch in the fabric of something new, something honest. One night, Lila asked him, "Are you going to live with us now?" He paused. "Would you like that?" he asked. She nodded quickly. "But only if you help with homework." He laughed, a deep, quiet laugh he hadn't heard in years. "I'll try," he promised. And in that promise, something shifted, not just in Nathan, but in the space between them. A space that had once been filled with silence and absence was slowly filling with words, laughter, and warmth. Maya stood in the doorway watching them. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The past was still there. But so was the chance for something more. And this time, Nathan was staying. Nathan wasn't sure when the ache in his chest turned into something softer. Maybe it was the moment Ava fell asleep on his shoulder during a rainy afternoon. Or when Lila drew a family picture and, without hesitation, put him right next to her mom. Or maybe it was just waking up each morning and realizing he wasn't alone, not in the way that mattered. He still lived in his penthouse for now. But every evening, he was at Tara's house, helping with dinner, cleaning up crayons, learning how to fold laundry the way Maya liked it done. Slowly, awkwardly, he was weaving himself into their lives. But healing, he was learning, wasn't a straight path. One morning, Maya was standing in the kitchen sipping coffee when she said, without looking up, "You know the girls don't have your last name." He paused. "I didn't expect they would. They used to ask me about it. I just told them you were someone I used to know." Nathan didn't say anything right away. He took a deep breath and said, "What would you tell them now?" She turned to look at him, eyes steady. "That depends on you." That day stuck with him, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. Maya wasn't asking for grand gestures. She was asking for presence. For proof, not with words, but with time. So Nathan began to shift things, quietly. He asked his assistant to clear all weekends for the next 3 months. He converted the unused guest room in his penthouse into a child's room, filled with books, plush toys, and a soft night light shaped like a cloud. He started walking Ava and Lila to school with Maya, despite the sideways glances from people who recognized him. The world knew him as a titan of business, but the girls only knew him as Dad, and that title meant more than every award on his office wall. Still, not everything was perfect. One Friday evening, while helping Lila with her science homework, Nathan noticed Maya was unusually quiet. After the girls went to bed, he found her, on the porch, staring out at the sky. "What's wrong?" he asked. She hesitated. "They offered me a plea deal last year, before you came back. I didn't take it because I couldn't admit to something I didn't do. But if they reopen the case, they might not care that you paid the money. They might still want someone to blame." Nathan sat beside her, his jaw tightening. "Then I'll tell them the truth. Every piece of it." "It's not just about the money," she said. "It's about the kind of world people like us live in. You get second chances, people like me barely get first ones." He knew she was right. So the next day, he made a decision. He called a journalist, not a tabloid, not a flashy headline chaser, a real reporter, one who had spent years covering social justice issues. And he told her everything: the abandoned relationship, the forgotten family, the legal battle Maya was fighting, and most of all, the truth, that he had failed, not just Maya, but the system that allowed someone like her to fall so far without a net. The article was published a week later. It was honest, raw, powerful. It didn't paint Nathan as a hero. It painted him as a man waking up too late, but still choosing to wake up. The story went viral, not because of the fame, but because people saw something they rarely did: a powerful man admitting he had been wrong and then doing something about it. Maya received a letter the following Monday from the state prosecutor's office. The case was being officially closed, no further action, no record, just over. She read the letter 3 times before finally handing it to Nathan. "They don't want to fight," she whispered. "They don't want the world watching." He looked up at her, trying to read her expression, but for once there was no guarded wall. No waiting for the next disappointment, just quiet relief. That night, they all had dinner together. But this time, it was different. The weight was gone. The fear had faded. The past hadn't disappeared, but it had softened, like a scar that no longer hurt to touch. Lila insisted they play a board game after dinner. Ava wanted to bake cookies. Nathan did both, badly, and the girls laughed so hard they cried. Maya watched from the doorway. Later, when the house had gone still, Nathan walked her to her room, unsure what to say. "Good night," he whispered. But before he turned away, Maya touched his hand. "You stayed," she said. And those 2 words, so simple, so small, meant everything. Because in the end, it wasn't wealth or reputation or apologies that rebuilt what was broken. It was the decision to show up. Again and again. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. And for the first time in years, Nathan Carter didn't feel like he was running anymore. He felt like he was home. The sound of laughter spilled out of Tara's living room as Nathan helped Lila balance a pillow crown on her head. Ava clapped from the couch, her giggle quiet but full, and Maya, sitting nearby with a cup of tea, smiled without trying to hide it. It had become their rhythm. Simple evenings, quiet dinners, the warmth of a family rediscovering itself. But Nathan had learned that healing wasn't always gentle. Sometimes it arrived in waves, unexpected, overwhelming, and demanding. The knock at the door came just after sunset. Tara opened it, expecting a neighbor. Instead, she froze. Maya stood behind her and instantly recognized the man on the porch, Marcus. Nathan stepped into the hallway, cautious but calm. "Can I help you?" Marcus didn't smile. He looked at Nathan the way someone looks at a mirror that cracked their world. "I'm her brother." Maya stepped forward. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" "I got your letter," he said. "Months ago. I didn't reply because I didn't think you'd want me to." Nathan looked at Maya. She hadn't mentioned a brother, not once. But Marcus turned to him. "You're Nathan Carter, the one who left her." The words stung more than Nathan expected. Maya stepped between them. "Marcus, this isn't the time." "It is," he said firmly. "I spent years wondering where you were, Maya. I didn't know you had kids. I didn't know you were in trouble. And now I find out that while you were struggling to survive, he was flying in jets and building skyscrapers?" Nathan stayed silent. One to sleep and Tara had gone home. Marcus stood on the porch with Nathan. "You really love them?" Marcus asked. "I do," Nathan said without hesitation. "And you're not going to leave again?" "I'm not." Marcus studied him, then nodded. "Then don't just fix what you broke. Build something that lasts." Nathan extended his hand. It was the first time Marcus took it. The next week brought more change. Nathan invited Maya and the girls to his office. Not the boardroom, not the penthouse. The heart of his company, the foundation he had set up years ago but barely touched. "This," he told Maya, "used to be for show. I want it to mean something now." He proposed a new program, one dedicated to helping single parents navigate the legal system, find housing, gain financial independence. He wanted Maya to lead it, not as charity but as purpose. "You've lived it," he said. "You know what people need, more than I ever will." Maya hesitated. "You trust me with this?" "I trust you more than I trust myself." She smiled. "Then I'll do it, but on one condition." "What's that?" "You let me do it my way." He laughed. "Deal." The foundation launched 3 months later. The media picked up the story, headlines calling it redemption, a second chance, a public act of atonement. But for Nathan, it was something deeper. It was Maya, standing in front of a crowd, speaking her truth with strength and pride. It was Ava and Lila sitting in the front row, watching their mother not as someone who had once struggled, but as someone who had risen. It was Marcus helping organize volunteers, finding his place beside the sister he once lost. And it was Nathan, standing off stage, not needing to be in the spotlight anymore. Just quietly, solidly present. After the event, as the crowd cleared and the room dimmed, Maya walked up to him. "You kept your promise," she said. "I meant it." She reached out, taking his hand. "We're not the same people we were," she said. "But maybe." "That's the point." He looked at her, at the girls playing nearby, at the life they were building, not from scratch, but from something stronger. "You once said they didn't need a hero," he whispered. "Just someone who shows up." "And you did," she replied. Then, softly, she added, "Welcome home." Spring crept into the city like a gentle promise. Streets once gray bloomed with tiny bursts of color, and every morning seemed to hum with quiet renewal. For Nathan, it wasn't just the season changing, it was everything. His days no longer revolved around deals and deadlines. They revolved around laughter in the kitchen, walks to school with tiny fingers wrapped around his, and evenings that ended not with silence but with stories, songs, and sleepy good nights. The foundation Maya led was thriving. She had turned it into more than just a resource. It was a refuge. Women came in afraid, but left empowered. Single fathers, once invisible, found their voices. Teen parents found mentors. And in every success story, Maya poured her soul. But with growth came new challenges. One morning, as Nathan dropped Ava off at school, Maya called with a strained voice. "I need you to come down here." He arrived at the foundation's office to find it unusually quiet. Inside, Maya was seated across from a woman in a faded jacket, her eyes hollow with fear. "She's one of ours," Maya whispered. "Her name's Angela. She just found out her ex is petitioning for full custody. He has money, lawyers. She's got nothing but a job at the diner and a record that's not even her fault." Nathan sat down beside her. "Angela," he said gently, "what do you need right now?" The woman blinked, startled by his softness. "I need someone to believe I'm not a bad mom." That broke something open inside him. Nathan didn't promise miracles, but he promised to help. That night he called his legal team. Not the ones used to mergers, but the ones who knew how to fight for people who had no voice. The case became the first official legal defense supported by their foundation. Maya oversaw it personally, Nathan backing it every step. And when Angela won, when the court ruled in her favor and she wept into Maya's arms in front of a cheering crowd, it felt like more than a victory. It felt like purpose. But even as the foundation bloomed, Nathan's world kept shifting. He began making calls, quiet ones, to sell off pieces of his company. Not for money, for time. He no longer wanted to manage empires. He wanted to build memories. He wanted to be there when Lila rode a bike without training wheels, when Ava had her first recital, when Maya, exhausted after a long day, needed someone to just listen. One evening, after the girls were tucked in, Nathan found Maya sitting on the porch again, staring at the stars. "You know," she said softly, "there was a time I used to stare at this sky and wonder how I'd ever survive another day. And now?" he asked. "Now I look at the same sky and wonder how I got so lucky." Nathan sat beside her, silent for a long moment. "You didn't get lucky. You fought. You carried everyone, even when no one saw it." She looked at him. "And what about you?" "I'm still learning to carry the right things." Maya leaned her head on his shoulder. "You're doing okay." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of shared weight, of peace found in quiet places. Few days later, Maya came to him with something unexpected. A letter, old, yellowed, creased at the edges. "It was from your mother," she said. "She gave it to me the last time I saw her." Nathan opened it slowly. Inside, in delicate handwriting, were words he hadn't expected. "If you ever come back to her, be better than I taught you to be. Don't love her out of guilt. Love her because she's worth every fight." He read it twice, hands trembling. "I wish I had seen this earlier," he whispered. "You weren't ready," Maya said. "Now you are." And in that moment, something in him clicked into place. That night, with no cameras, no press, and no plan beyond truth, Nathan stood in the kitchen and pulled out a small box. Maya stared at it. "I'm not asking for a perfect answer," he said. "Just for a chance to keep choosing each other, every day, even when it's hard." Her eyes welled with tears, not of fear, but of something deeper, hope. She nodded, a single trembling yes. There was no ring inside, just a tiny gold key. "To our home," he whispered, "wherever that may be." Maya laughed through her tears. "Then let's go find it together." And for the first time, Nathan Carter, the man who once owned cities, realized he'd finally built something no amount of money could buy. A family. Rain tapped gently against the windows as the morning light filtered into their quiet home. Nathan stood in the kitchen, whisking eggs with one hand while Lila leaned against his side, still groggy from sleep. Across the room, Ava was curled up on the couch, reading aloud to her doll, and Maya was humming softly as she folded laundry. It was a scene so ordinary it might have gone unnoticed, yet to Nathan it was everything. He had spent most of his life surrounded by marble floors and glass towers, mistaking success for silence and power for peace. But here, in a kitchen that smelled of cinnamon and laughter, he had finally found a kind of wealth that numbers couldn't measure. Later that day, Maya got a phone call. She stepped outside to answer, and when she came back, her face was unreadable. "What is it?" Nathan asked. "It was from the courthouse," she said quietly. "They're reopening the case." His heart sank. "Someone submitted new evidence," she continued. "About the company, about the funds that went missing, and it's pointing toward someone else." Nathan blinked. "You mean They're saying I may have been set up." The words hung in the air. For so long they had accepted the past as unchangeable. Maya had served her sentence. She had rebuilt. They had moved forward. But now, truth had found a voice, and it was speaking. Within days, a quiet investigation turned into headlines. News outlets picked up the story. Former CEO's partner exonerated after years behind bars. Nathan watched the media frenzy unfold from the edge. He didn't speak to cameras. He let Maya lead. At a press conference, she stood at the podium, eyes strong and clear. "I am not here for revenge," she said. "I am here because the truth matters. Because every person who has ever been silenced deserves to be heard. Because second chances aren't given. They're made." Nathan stood behind her, holding the girl's hands. The man who had orchestrated the fraud, once a trusted associate, was arrested. His confession included forged documents, manipulated emails, and a calculated plan to let Maya take the fall. When the dust settled, Maya was offered a public apology by the city. She declined the cameras but accepted the letter, quietly. "Don't need the world to say they're sorry," she told Nathan. "I just needed to know I wasn't wrong all those years. I needed to know I wasn't alone." She wasn't. Weeks passed. The foundation grew beyond anything they imagined. Donations poured in. Other mothers, fathers, siblings began to step forward with stories of their own. Nathan realized that the small key he had once given Maya wasn't just for their home. It had unlocked something bigger. One crisp Saturday, Maya, Nathan, Marcus, and the girls stood before a new building. Not another high-rise, but a 3-story center built from glass and stone, full of light and space. Ava tugged Nathan's coat. "What's this place?" He knelt. "It's for families like ours. For kids like you, who are braver than you know. For moms like yours who never gave up. And for people who need someone to stand beside them when it feels like no one will." They named it the Second Light Center. Maya gave the opening speech. Nathan didn't speak that day. He didn't need to. His voice was now in every brick, every room, every child who walked through the doors with fear and left with hope. Later, in the quiet of their now permanent home, Lila crept into Nathan's room holding a drawing. "It's us," she said proudly. "That's you, that's Mommy, that's Ava, and that's me." He smiled. "You're a good artist," she beamed. "I drew us all standing under the stars, because Mommy said the stars always come out, even when it's dark." Nathan swallowed hard. "She's right." Lila pointed to one more star. "That one's Grandma, watching." He pulled her into a hug, holding her close. That night, as the city glittered outside their windows, Nathan and Maya sat quietly, hands intertwined. They didn't talk about the past. They didn't need to. It had shaped them. But it no longer defined them. And in the warmth of that room, surrounded by family, healing, and quiet laughter, Nathan Carter understood something simple, powerful, and lasting. Redemption isn't about erasing your mistakes. It's about choosing every single day to become someone better than the person who made them. And he had, not by rewriting the past, but by showing up for the future.